Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the science of skill, and we're taking our cues from Scott H. Young's fantastic book, Get Better at Anything. Ever wonder why some people seem to improve at, like, lightning speed, while the rest of us get stuck? Well, we're going to unpack their secrets.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a pretty cool mystery. Think about the game Tetris. For decades, the best players in the world, the absolute best, they all hit a wall. A performance ceiling they just couldn't break. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, this new generation of players comes along and just shatters all the old records. The big question is, how did they do it?
Right, so let's talk about a guy named Joseph Saley. Back in 2020, this 18-year-old kid hits level 34. Now, you got to understand, for years, everybody thought getting past level 29 was just impossible. They called it the kill screen. The pieces in the game are literally falling faster than a human can even react. It's not supposed to be possible. And yet, he did it.
So, what on earth changed? The game didn't change. And it's not like humans suddenly evolved faster thumbs, right? The answer, and this is key, was a massive shift in the learning environment itself. And that brings us to the very first principle of getting better at anything. You have to learn how to truly see.
And the difference was, well, it was surprisingly simple. You see, the old school players, they were lone wolves. They played in isolation, keeping their best strategies top secret. But the new generation, they grew up on YouTube and Twitch. So what did they do? They live streamed everything. We're talking every single move, every frustrating mistake, and every stroke of genius. It created this environment of what the book calls radical transparency. And it's through this transparency that these incredible techniques came to light. Stuff like hyper tapping. Get this, it's a technique where you vibrate your thumb so fast you can hit a button more than 10 times a second. Insane, right? And the crazy part is, it was actually invented way back by a prodigy named Thor Ackerland. But because no one could see how he did it, the technique was basically lost for almost 20 years. Live streaming brought it back. It made it visible. Now anyone could watch it, break it down, copy it, and get better at it. The new players weren't smarter. They just had a massive advantage. They could see exactly what success looked like in real time. Now, this whole idea of learning by seeing, it's not just for gamers, not by a long shot. Actually, if you look back in history, it was the core training for some of the most creative people who ever lived. And that leads us to a really interesting and kind of counterintuitive idea that true creativity often begins with simple copying.
I know. That probably sounds totally wrong to us today. We're all about originality, right? Be unique. But listen to this. Even the great Leonardo da Vinci himself argued that an apprentice artist should spend years just meticulously copying the work of masters. They shouldn't even think about creating something new until they've done that.
And it turns out, modern science totally backs us up. There's this thing called the worked example effect, and it was discovered by a psychologist named John Sweller. And what his research found was pretty mind-blowing. He showed that students who just studied a finished, step-by-step solution to a problem actually learned the concept faster and way more deeply than the students who were told to just struggle through and solve it themselves. So why on earth does that work? Well, think about it. When you're faced with a totally new problem, trying to solve it from scratch puts a huge load on your brain. It's like having way too many tabs open on your computer. Your brain is just scrambling to find any answer, any solution at all. And that means you have zero mental energy left over to actually learn the pattern behind the solution. But when you study an example that's already solved for you, boom, all that brain power is freed up. You can stop worrying about the answer and start focusing on the method, what the experts call the strong method. And that's the real key to being able to solve all kinds of similar problems down the road.
Okay, so we've got it. Seeing is the first crucial step. But obviously, you can't just watch YouTube videos and expect to become a master, right? To really, truly own a skill, you have to make that jump from seeing to actually doing.
The amazing sci-fi author Octavia Butler, man, she knew this struggle inside and out. For years, she was just collecting a pile of rejection slips. She was writing, she was practicing, but it was like shouting into the void. She was in a total vacuum. She had absolutely no idea what was wrong with her work, let alone how she was supposed to fix it. So what changed for her?
Her whole career basically ignited the moment she went to this thing called the Clarion Workshop. And why was it so powerful? Because it created the absolute perfect learning environment. It was this intense, nonstop loop. She got to see how professional authors worked. She was forced to do the work, writing a new story every single night. And then, crucially, she got feedback. Her work was picked apart by pros and her peers the very next day. That cycle, that seeing, doing, and getting feedback, that rapid, consistent loop is the real engine of improvement.
All right, so when we're in this practice loop, what's actually happening inside our heads? What are we improving? This brings us to a really common myth, one that a lot of us probably believe. And that's the idea that your mind is like a muscle. But here's the thing. For more than 100 years, research has shown that this whole mind as a muscle idea is just wrong. Practice doesn't build up some kind of general mental strength. A much better way to think about it is that your mind is a toolbox. Learning chess makes you better at chess. It doesn't magically make you a better business strategist. Learning to code makes you a better coder. These skills are specific tools for specific jobs, and they only really transfer to other areas if those areas share what researchers call identical elements.
And this brings us to our last point, and honestly, it might be the toughest one to swallow. It's this paradox. Sometimes, to really break through a plateau and hit a whole new level of skill, you actually have to be willing to get worse for a little while. I mean, just look at the legendary story of Tiger Woods. It's 1997. He has just won the Masters with one of the most dominant performances in the history of golf. He's on top of the world. So what does he do? He decides to completely tear down and rebuild his swing. And for more than a year, his performance absolutely tanked. People in the golf world, all the commentators, they thought he'd lost his mind. But then, he came back. And he was even better than before, with a new swing that was way more consistent and powerful.
So what was going on there psychologically? Well, Tiger's original swing had become autonomous. It was like breathing, a totally unconscious reflex that he'd mastered. But to make it even better, he had to destroy that reflex. He had to force himself all the way back to square one, to the cognitive phase. You know, that clumsy, super frustrating stage of learning something new, where you have to consciously think about every single movement. That's where he went. It's a huge risk, for sure, but sometimes it's the only way to smash through the ceiling of your old habit.
So the big takeaway here is that getting better is never a straight line up. It's a powerful, dynamic loop of seeing, then doing, and then getting feedback. And every now and then, it's going to demand that you have the courage to actually get worse for a bit so you can ultimately get way, way better. So that leaves us with a final question to think about. Where in your life might you need to take that one step back so that you can take a giant leap forward?